United States is, quote, proceeding as if we are preparatory to a full pandemic. So says the Homeland Security Chief, Janet Napolitano, after confirming 40 cases of swine flu in the United States, with others possible. The Obama administration is responding aggressively, even as the president says, quote, it's not cause for alarm. But in our third story in the countdown, this might be. There was $900 million for pandemic flu preparation included in the stimulus bill, cut out at the insistence of so-called moderate Republicans, following the sage advice of Karl Rove, who, in an editorial for Murdoch on February 5th, derided much of the stimulus bill as irrelevant to job creation, adding that the healthcare sector, quote, added jobs last year. Senator Susan Collins of Maine, one of those pivotal Republican votes at the time, echoed that notion, quoting, what does that have to do with an economic stimulus package? Ditto for Pennsylvania Senator Arlen Specter, saying that flu preparedness money should be out. Both senators said that money should be in a regular appropriations bill, as Senator Collins reiterated in a statement today. The money was, in fact, included in a subsequent appropriations bill. But the rationale for those pandemic flu funds in the stim that the Republicans laughed at, that came from House Appropriations Committee Chairman David Obey, who at that time argued that a pandemic could turn a recession into something worse or stifle a recovery. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we have Governor Rick Perry of Texas, Mr. Secession himself, yesterday requesting from the federal government, the CDC, that it provide his state 37,430 courses of antiviral medications from the strategic national stockpile. There are now 3 confirmed cases of swine flu in Texas. Let's turn to the Washington editor of The Nation magazine, Chris Hayes. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Keith.
2 major caveats here. That money was indeed restored in a regular spending bill. And there's even that dicey report out of the conservative press that Senator Schumer of New York had put the pandemic money on his list of porky things that had been put into the stim by the House and should come out. However, the GOP boasting of having cut this out of the stimulus, another indicator of them being too clever by half?
Well, I think it's an indicator of the fact that their theory of what government should provide is incomplete, to say the least, and incoherent and difficult to make much sense of. And the sort of definitional argument they started getting into with the stimulus about what was and wasn't stimulus was really crazy. I mean, they were saying things like food stamps, some of the most stimulative spending you could have wasn't stimulus. Obviously, if you spend $900 million, you're going to hire a lot of people who are going to go out into the country and do research and presumably distribute vaccinations, et cetera. That's all very stimulative. I mean, so they created this artificial category of what was and was not stimulus that never really made any sense to begin with.
Is there an unfortunate side effect, or unfortunately that we have to have a side effect to something like this, but is there a positive in this? We had Governor Jindal, who made fun of volcano monitoring as if it were something from a cartoon somewhere, and of course that turns out, as Governor Palin could tell you, that they really need to be monitored. And now this is that loopy, crazy notion of, cause and effect and science stuff. Are these things possibly making a comeback as a result of some very unhappy circumstances and that nonsense from one side in the funding battle?
Well, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the politics plays out. What I do know is that, look, there are basic things called public goods, which economists call public goods, that government provides because the private sector doesn't provide it. And I understand the Republicans, there's a lot of things they don't like, but it just seems crazy to me to go after these basic public goods. I mean, the epidemiologists that work at the CDC, the kind of things that they're doing right now are just example number one. If you were to sort of list things government should be doing, we all agree should be doing, and actually does quite well. If you look at it, this would be exactly that kind of thing, and yet they come in for ridicule from Republicans. So you have to ask, what exactly do they want the state to do? What do they want government to do? And as far as I can tell, all they want them to do is bail out banks, build bombs, and build prisons.
And cut taxes.
Yeah.
Down to the point where the government's sending you $1,000 every month. The added irony to this, of course, is Congressman Obey's point it was a pretty damn good one. This is not just about public health or jobs that might be created by giving people flu shots. If the thing got out of control, it could indeed thwart economic recovery. And was that, I mean, did everybody agree that the stimulus was supposed to protect the economy and increase jobs, or at least to protect the ones we already had?
Yeah, and you're seeing actually in Mexico there's going to be quite a bit of economic loss because people, I mean, I was listening to a report this morning on NPR from a reporter who was saying essentially no one was in the streets of Mexico City yesterday. People aren't going to jobs, there's no daycare, the kids are pulled out of school. All of that has terrible, terrible economic consequences. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of an open and shut case that avoiding that kind of mass panic, trying to keep things contained, is going to have very, very positive economic effects.
And the footnote to this, the Health and Human Services Secretary has not yet been confirmed, Governor Sebelius, because the far right doesn't like her stand on pro-choice. Again, this does seem to be the cart before the horse. If you've got adults dying of this disease or the potential for that, pro-choice would seem to be a secondary issue.
It's really outrageous, the obstruction over Sebelius and Dawn Johnson, I'll note, who is being held up because of a footnote she wrote 20 years ago, 3 years out of law school. One footnote. Both these nominees are being held up. They're being filibustered by the same Republicans that were raising a great hue and cry against filibustering of nominees as an assault on the very nature of the Constitution itself, are now filibustering over their substantive views of abortion, people that will have absolutely nothing to do with abortion policy, as a very cheap, essentially, payment to their base, and it's absurd.
Chris Hayes of The Nation. Great thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Keith.